Welcome to the English final exams e-learning. I hope that when all this quarantine started, you didn't look at the screen of your computer like this the first day in Google Classroom, as one of my students described it in a meme. But if you did, and if you had problems waiting for the online stream, just like we did last week, then this video session is perfect for you because it's pre-recorded, but at the same time you will have some online help where you can interact and practice speaking. I will tell you about this later. So let's start. We are going to talk about the English final exams, the speaking part. O-level and A-level. Now I will switch a little bit to Hungarian. Az angol érettségi vizsgáknak a középszintű és az emelt szintű feladatait fogjuk átnézni. Kérlek, jegyezd meg, hogy az O-level jelenti a középszintet, az A-level pedig az emelt szintet, hogy majd tudd a videó során, hogy éppen miről van szó. So let's see the speaking exam tasks. At O-level, there's an interview where the examiner talks to you, asks questions, and gives you the chance to tell your opinion and give your views. The second task is a role play, a situational role play. You are given a situation and you have to play, you have to act it out with the examiner. And the third task is a picture-based talk. At A-level, there's also an interview. Instead of the situational role play, there's a debate where a statement is given and you have to argue for or against it. And the third task is a picture-based talk. Now let's speak English and let's practice. Our topic we are going to do today is housing and environment. It's one of the 10 topics for the final exams. So, what are the subtopics involved at O-level? You should be able to talk about your home, your neighborhood, your hometown, living in the country or in the city, animals and plants around us, the environment around us, the weather. Of course, at A-level, all these topics are also included. At a higher level, you should use higher level of grammar and vocabulary and so on. Plus, you should be able to talk about the development of your neighborhood and its problems as well, and the balance between nature and human society. Also, you should be able to discuss environmental protection, the possibilities and the problems involved. Well, here's a meme again for you, and later on I will tell you why these memes are so important. Actually, I want you to get involved in a meme challenge. This is one of the memes that my students made. Of course, you want to get good grades, but to learn English to understand memes is another aspect. So, let's see an O-level, Let's see an O-level interview question list about your home and neighborhood. Do you live in a house or a flat? You should be able to describe it. What do you like about your home? What don't you like about your home? What's your neighborhood like? Are there any green areas? How far is it from the city center? What are the people like? So for example, I live in a flat on the 3rd floor of a block. It's a small flat. It has a bedroom, a living room, a kitchen, a bathroom, a toilet. But I like it because it has a balcony too. The neighbors are nice and it's quite warm. What I don't like about it is that it's quite old. It also needs some renovation. So there's always something going on. And because it's on the 3rd floor, I need to climb the stairs a lot. There are a lot of green areas around, there are playgrounds, there are a lot of trees, and the mountains are not far away, so you can go out and breathe in the fresh air. You can walk your dog. A lot of people living in these blocks have small dogs, so they can go out and almost instantly they get to a green place. It's not far from the city center. There are a lot of shops and there are a lot of services around. But also, if you want to go to the town center, it's just like 5 minutes walk. So everything is very close. I live in a small town, you know. I like the people in my area. Actually, in the block where I live, there are a lot of elderly people. They are nice. They are very friendly, and because they are elderly, I don't hear a lot of noise from their flats. So actually, despite the rumors that these blocks of flats often have noisy flats, this is not true for my flat because my neighbors are so nice. We have balconies, so we can talk to each other over our balconies, which is a great advantage in this time of the quarantine. So we can also enjoy each other's company from a few meters away. All right, now I have presented how to talk about your home and neighborhood, but I'd like to go on to help you with some expressions when you want to talk about the same topic. So I live in a house, a flat, or an apartment, in a small 2-story house, or in a block of flats on the 3rd floor. It's a 2-bedroom apartment. You can make sentences like, my house has this or that, or my flat has a balcony, a garden, a terrace, whatever. For example, my house has a kitchen with a dining table. There is an office or a study, a balcony, a terrace where you can talk to your neighbors, for example. Now, you can express what you like about your home. I like my home because it's spacious, or cozy, or light, or warm, or cool. Warm in winter, cool in the summer. Comfortable. It's convenient for my work because my workplace is near. Or you should be able to express why you don't like it. I don't like it because it's very old and it needs a lot of renovation, for example. Or I don't like it because it's cramped, dark, drafty, stuffy, noisy. Also, you should be able to talk about the people you live with or the people around you who live in the same place. How far away you live from the city center. For example, I live in the city center or on the outskirts of the city or in the suburbs. I live in a village or in the countryside. And you can describe your neighborhood as it's a quiet neighborhood or lively or noisy. Well, I've listed a lot of expressions. If you have any problems with the vocabulary, of course, there are dictionaries that can help you, but I'll tell you later about the online help that you could use where you could get some assistance and you can ask your questions there as well. You can also use expressions like there are. This is a very basic term to say what's there in your flat or in the neighborhood where you live. Okay, now let's go on to A level. Let's see some questions that the interviewer might ask you, like what kind of building is your home? What are the advantages and disadvantages of different types of homes? How would you make your dream home green, for example, environmental issues? What facilities are there in your neighborhood? How has it developed in the past few years? What suggestions would you make to improve it? I'm not saying that all these questions will be asked with this topic. And of course, you can get some questions that you don't expect but are related to this topic. At A level, actually, you can get any question. Now, I'd like to demonstrate this A-level interview task with my American colleague, Claire, who is telling us about your home and homes over the internet. Okay, can you tell me about your home and the neighborhood where you live?
Yeah, I grew up in California and in the suburbs of Silicon Valley. I first grew up in my childhood was spent in a pretty horrible neighborhood. It was a lot of working families. So most of the children my age and a little bit younger and older than me, we were what's called latchkey kids, where we had house key and would walk ourselves to and from school. Our parents would not get home until the evening. And so we were expected to do our chores and our homework on our own without any supervision.
Yeah, what do you mean? What do you mean the neighborhood was quite horrible?
Well, as I said, it was a lot of working class families, a lot of single parents. There was a lot of drug use and crime in my neighborhood. It was a dangerous area. If you didn't live there, it was considered quite uncomfortable, I think, for people to be in that neighborhood. So,
I see.
But it was an interesting way. When we were growing up, of course, we didn't know that we were poor and living in a dangerous neighborhood. We only learned the rules for how we should behave and what we should do. It's I suppose, slightly interesting story. When I was very young, a teenager across the street became a drug dealer, and he was home all day. And so a lot of parents urged their children to spend time at his house, not that they wanted their children to do drugs, and of course none of us did, but he was a very protective and very considerate neighbor to all of us.
I see.
So we had an interesting set of role models, I can say, growing up. When I began high school, my mother remarried, and she had a much more stable job at that time. So we moved out of that neighborhood and into a more affluent area. Our house was much larger. We had, I think, 5 bedrooms and a nice garden. Most of the families in that neighborhood, if both parents worked, one of the parents would work only part-time while the children were in school. So there was much more supervision in the neighborhood, generally, and not as much crime. This is the neighborhood that my parents still live in now, so it's considered residential.
Right. Have there been any changes since your childhood? I mean, in the neighborhood, have there been any developments or anything new?
In my first neighborhood, to tell you the truth, I haven't been back recently. I'm not sure that I would fit in or feel comfortable in the neighborhood any longer. It's been a long time since I left it, and a lot has improved in my life from that time.
I see.
I would imagine that there are changes, but I know that houses are still basically the same houses that have been there. In my current neighborhood, I do go back when I visit my folks. It's the same neighborhood. I think maybe a few of the shops have changed from a restaurant to hairdressers or something like that, but there haven't been development with regards to housing or big construction areas. Not in that neighborhood. It was a bit of a change when I moved here to Hungary, and I am living in a flat, and so it's a new experience for me, having such close neighbors that I can hear them through the wall sometimes. We have to remember to be courteous to one another, I think.
And do you find a lot of disadvantages of this kind of...
Disadvantages. I think I miss having a garden. my parents have a garden, and we often spend we even have a table with a little picnic area. So having meals outside was common. And here, there's not much space for being in the sunshine. Yeah, I have a balcony, but it's small.
Yeah, and do you like living in the neighborhood where you are?
Oh yeah, it's comfortable. Most of my neighbors are retired people here in this part of the building, but there are children and small families, or families with small children in the neighboring blocks of flats. So it's comfortable for me. Mm-hmm. I'm just one person, and the flat is rather large. I think a family could easily take space here. But
right. Yeah. And do you think there should be any developments or improvements or any renovation work or any modernization in the area?
In the area?
Or in the block?
Or in the block. Mm-hmm. Well, I think the area is actually quite comfortable. There's a play area for children. There's a fitness area if you choose to work out outside. There's some equipment available for the public. There's walking paths and shops nearby. Even for me, walking to school doesn't take more than 15 minutes. So it's a comfortable distance. Yeah. So I'm very satisfied with the neighborhood, certainly, and the neighbors. In my flat, I would really like to have new windows because they're quite drafty. And in the winter time, things get a little bit cold. The heating doesn't quite take the strength of the wind sometimes is too much for it.
Yeah, I
see. But no, in general, it's comfortable. Mm-hmm. The only thing I can think of that might be helpful for others, although not for me, would be a lift in the flats, especially as most of my neighbors are senior citizens. Mm-hmm. It would also be helpful if someone had a health problem or a physical issue where they couldn't climb 3 flights of stairs to get to the flat.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Yeah. Now, let's see a list of expressions that you could use to talk about your home and your neighborhood and the topics around this. For example, the types of homes could be detached house, semi-detached house. You might live in a high-rise block or a tower block in the south, east, west, north of the city center, for example. It could be a converted apartment or a studio apartment. You could say that it's tiny but cozy. You could also say, I live in a shared house, or I have some flatmates, depending on your circumstances. Or you could say, I live by myself, if it's only you. Well, actually, I live by myself, not counting my cat. When you talk about the area, you could say that I live in a commercial or industrial or in a green area. You should be able to talk about the changes that have happened to the neighborhood. For example, recently there have been some improvements. Some things have become more modern, whatever, more and more, this or that, less and less, or fewer and fewer, and so on. You should be able to talk about the public transport system, parking spaces, whether it's convenient for electric cars to park there, how outdated or modern or eco-friendly the houses and the neighborhood is. The houses are and the neighborhood is. Also, are there any green areas? Is waste selected, or how is it collected? You should be able to talk about the crime rate, for example, as well. Does it have a low crime rate or a high crime rate? Okay, now what's Flipgrid? I'll tell you about an online help source that you could use. This is Flipgrid. I'm sorry, this is a very bad picture of me, but What it does is that you can record a short video and you can have a debate, or you can have kind of a talk about a topic, so you can practice speaking there in my group of these topics. So I've started these debate groups, and you can record your own video and you can get feedback about how you talk. I will tell you about the other online resources that you could use later. Okay, let's go on to another type of exercise, another type of task at the exam, a situational role play at O level. For example, some students at your school have decided to make your school more environment friendly. Talk to one of your classmates and suggest what actions to take, how to make the campaign popular, what you and your friend would like to take responsibility for. And in this situation, the examiner plays the role of your schoolmate. Now, how to do a situation like this? You can use some expressions like, do you think we should? Asking for suggestions, you could use this expression, do you think we should? And then you can express your opinion. I think we should. You can give advice or make suggestions with this expression. Why don't we? Shall we? We could. How about? What about doing this or that? Okay. Let's do this or that. These are all expressions that you could use to make suggestions and ask for suggestions. To react to these, you could use expressions like, that's a good idea, great, or okay, then, and you continue. Or if you don't agree that much, then you could say, well, I'm not quite sure that's a good idea. Maybe we'd better do something else. Okay, so let's see another example of a situational role play. You want to have a pet, but your parents are not very keen on animals in the house. Try to convince your mother or father about the advantages of having a pet. And in this situation, the examiner plays the role of the mother or the father. Now let's see what expressions you could use for this situation. You could start like this. Can I ask you something? And you could ask for something with these expressions. May I? Or could I? And when you give reasons, then you could use the expression, I know, but I think I could, we could. You could also make suggestions with how about, or what about this or that, or maybe, perhaps. You can imagine what's going to happen or what you could do in the future and say sentences with I'll or I would, I promise I will. If you get what you want, you can say, oh, thank you so much. If you can't have what you want, then you can say, well, I understand, or maybe later. Okay, so this is a situational role play, and we are going to act it out with one of my students from Jurisich Miklós Secondary Grammar School in Kőszeg, and she is called Annette. We are going to call her online. Okay. Hi.
So, I would like to ask you something. I really want a pet.
Oh,
Can
really?
I have one?
What kind of pet do you have in mind?
I would like a small dog, maybe a Yorkshire Terrier.
Oh, well, you know, you've never had a pet, and I'm not very keen on animals in the house. Well, I don't think it's a very good idea.
I mean, I'm an only child, so it could be my friend, and I could play with it. I could study how to take care of something.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a good thing, I think.
Yeah, I understand, you know, but who's going to look after the pet?
I'm going to do that. I will buy the food for it, I will feed it, and then if I could have one.
Right. Well, I'm a little bit afraid because everybody tells me that when their kids got a pet, a dog or a cat, after a while it was the mother or the father who had to take it out for a walk or, you know, feed it or something. So I'm still a little bit worried about this.
I can promise that I will take care of it after a long time as well, because I really want one. It is my dream, and I think it's a good thing to take it for a walk as well, because I can clear my mind during walking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see what you mean. Well, and are you going to pay for everything, like vet costs, food, all sorts of stuff?
If I will be able to have one, then yes, of course.
All right. Well, I'll try to convince your father too. But well, if he says no, then you know it's not going to happen. Maybe you could have an alternative, like start with a hamster or a goldfish instead of a dog.
I would be okay with hamster as well. I mean, they are cute, and I could learn as well that's how to take care of them, and they could be my friend as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, so I'll talk to your father, and if he doesn't really want a dog, then a hamster could be an alternative.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, okay, thanks. Now let's go on to an A-level task, a debate. In a debate, you are asked to express whether you are for or against a statement. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Living in a block of flats is better than living in a detached house. Decide and give arguments why you think so. Well, this is not a very difficult statement, but the difficulty of this exercise is that you must make sure that you either argue for it or against it, and you mustn't mix the two sides. And of course, you should be polite. Now let's see another example of a debate. Here's another statement: testing on animals should be banned. And the examiner always argues for the opposite side. Of course, you can choose. So if you choose that you are for it, then the examiner will be against it. Now, what are some expressions that you could use in a debate? When you express your opinion, you could say, I think, I believe, in my opinion, as I see it, as far as I'm concerned. What I'm trying to say is that, let me tell you what I think about this. You should be able to ask for your partner's, for the examiner's opinion. Do you agree? What do you think? Have you ever thought of this or that? What's your opinion? You should be able to bring examples. For example, for instance, also you should be able to express that you understand your partner's point of view with expressions like, I see what you mean, I understand your point. If you don't agree, you must be polite, of course. So you could say, well, that's true, but, or I see your point, but, or I'm sorry, but I can't agree with you, or well, I only partly agree with you. So let's do this debate task with my American colleague, Claire, and we are going to be on opposite sides. So here's a statement for you. Testing on animals should be banned. What do you think about it? Do you agree or disagree? And tell me why.
Oh, I strongly disagree with this statement. And the main reason I have is people's health. I believe that medical testing is essential, that the full expectations of a drug or a treatment cannot be fully experienced only in a laboratory situation or only with testing chemicals. I think it needs a live trial before human trials.
Well, I see what you mean, but you know, I'm an animal lover. And I always feel so sorry for those animals, mice or monkeys and lots of other animals. And I feel it's really cruel to put their lives to risk, actually, for the sake of some experiments. And I don't think it's right. What do you think?
Well, I see your point, and I can agree that cruelty towards anyone and anything should not be allowed. But I also believe that if we have to make a priority between lives, that human lives should come first and animal lives should come second. So as sad as it is, if we can save human lives by animal testing, then I believe it is important that we do so.
Yeah, I partly agree with you that it's important to save human lives, and these animals, these experiments on animals could help this go. On the other hand, I think there should be some other ways to test these chemicals and drugs. For example, just tissues or just some kind of body organs, parts that are taken out of dead animals, dead bodies, should serve as the basis of these experiments. And I think it's just a question of technology. Have you considered that?
Absolutely. I can agree with you in that regard, that technology improves, and as our scientific knowledge expands, we can change the way we test and the quality of our test. But to ban scientific inquiry in some way would be detrimental to our worldwide experience. Even as we are finding out nowadays with the virus situation, we need to prioritize all experimentation as a way to find a solution. Yes.
I understand your point, and I really believe that with technology we can come to the point when animal testing will just not be necessary.
I hope we do. I hope we do reach that point.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. All right, now let's go on to the third part of the speaking exam at O level, which is going to be a picture-based talk. This time I chose a picture for you about the weather. You always get a short instruction with the pictures, and usually it's not just one picture, it's three. Actually, this is 3 pictures in one. So compare and contrast the weather in the 3 cities. What activities could you do in this weather in these cities? Now, the point of this task is that you should be able to talk about it for a few minutes on your own, without any questions. Well, if you can't go on, the examiner will ask you questions, of course, but you should try to talk about it as much as you can on your own. So let's see what expressions you could use. When you talk about what you can see, you can say, in the first picture, in the other photo, the photo must have been taken in, obviously, I can see different, that reminds me of, both pictures remind me of, I guess, it or they might be something, perhaps. So you can also make guesses about the pictures, so express your own ideas and thoughts about it. The point is not to describe the picture, the point is to talk about the topic that is involved, that the picture suggests. So that's why you should be able to express your personal reactions and opinions as well, with expressions like this. Personally, I prefer this or that because I've never been in a situation like this. I'd like to, it would be great to, I always try to do this or that. I like something very much, but sometimes I don't really like something because, and I think. Okay, so make sure that you express what you think about it, what your opinion is. Now let's go back to this picture, and this time we are going to do the task with Annette, my student, and she's going to talk about it just like in a... So, please look at the picture and compare and contrast what you can see, and tell me about the weather and the activities you could do in these cities.
Okay, so in London there will be 15 degrees Celsius and a little bit rainy. Like we know about London, there is always rain, so it is a little bit of a disadvantage, but it doesn't really matter, I think, because it's about the city, not about the weather. If it's raining, you could go to visit some places that are inside, such as museums, or the London Eye is a very beautiful place to visit as well. In New York, there will be 25 degrees Celsius and sunny. It is a little bit hot, but I think it's a good weather to look around the city, to go on a boat ride to the Statue of Liberty, and you could go to the Broadway as well. In Paris, there will be 21 degrees Celsius and a little bit cloudy. It is a good weather to look around. You can go to the Eiffel Tower or the Louvre. Compared to my country that I live in, we always have different weathers, but it isn't hot like in South Italy, where there could be 40 degrees Celsius as well, and it isn't as cold like in America, Utah, where it could be even minus 20 degrees Celsius. I live in a village, so when it's a good weather, I can go for a hike in the mountains, or for a walk in a park where there is a pond. And I have cities near here, so I could go for a walk with my friends in the city as well, or see a movie.
And what could you do in your village when the weather is like rainy or cloudy?
Well, when it's rainy, I can't really go for a hike or a walk because it gets muddy because we don't have pavements in our village. But when it's just cloudy, then I think it's a good weather as well for a walk. I can invite my friends to the house and do a movie night or something like that.
What are some other activities that you could do on a rainy day?
I think me and my friends could go for a car ride to go somewhere to see something or something like that.
Right. Okay, all right, thank you very much. All right, now let's go on to the third task type in the A-level exam, and it's also a picture-based talk. You are usually given just a short topic for the pictures, like this. The pictures show different attitudes to nature. Compare and contrast the pictures. But of course, if you can't go on, well, the idea of this task is also to go on and talk about it on your own. But if you can't go on, or if you say something that needs clarification, the examiner might ask you some more questions, like what does respect for nature mean? Or what would be the appropriate and responsible behavior in nature? what measures do you recommend to promote the right balance between nature and humans? Let's see some expressions that you could use. Obviously, I can see different, that reminds me of, both pictures remind me of, I guess, it, they might, perhaps, this reminds me of, I think, in my opinion, as far as I'm concerned. When you talk about your arguments, you could order them with the expressions like, first of all, also, I'd like to mention, another important thing or another great thing. However, it can be, I think it's important. So when you talk about the topic related to the picture, you should be able to talk about arguments, reasons, your opinion, and your personal reactions and feelings about it as well. So, I'm going to demonstrate how to talk about these two pictures, okay? So, these pictures show us different attitudes to nature. In the first one, I can see a positive attitude. A woman is walking her dog in the forest. I hope she's not going to leave any rubbish or waste in the forest. And if she doesn't let her dog go away and chase the deer and other animals in the forest, then I think it's a perfectly good way to behave in nature. A lot of people like being in forests and parks and green areas, and as long as they respect the environment around them, I think it's perfectly nice because it serves their health, and also it can serve educational purposes. So for example, when you take your children to the forest and explain to them how a forest works, or take them to guided walks done by, for example, the nature park or national park people, then they can learn a lot about the ecosystem as well. In the second picture, we can see an example of an irresponsible attitude. People have left a lot of rubbish in nature, and unfortunately, we can see a lot of this type of behavior. And I just simply don't understand why. All towns, cities have waste disposal sites where they could take their rubbish. So I just simply can't see the point of taking your rubbish out to the forest. And of course, if you are a tourist, the best way to collect your rubbish is to take a plastic bag, for example, with you, and collect your own rubbish and take it back to the city. If you could take your food into the forest, then you will be able to take your rubbish back to the city. It's very harmful for the environment because it pollutes the soil, it pollutes the water, and it takes away the space from animals and plants, and this risks our environment, and eventually it will have a bad effect on our lives. So I'm really worried about people who put their waste into nature because they are just not thinking about their own lives or the lives of their children and their grandchildren. I think everybody should learn how to take responsibility for their environment. Another point is that it should be started at an early age, so we should start environmental education at an early age with little kids, taking them to green areas where they can learn about animals and plants. And I grant you that they will love it. They just enjoy being outside, playing and learning about what's around them. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Now, we are at the end of our session, so I'd like to show you my Facebook page, Bridging the Gap, where I will give you some online help to help you with practicing. I will give you links where you can practice speaking or practice vocabulary or other things like exam tasks. I can give you online help, and also there will be meme challenges where you can use your creativity and your sense of humor to make your English learning a little bit more fun. Thank you very much for your attention and good luck in the exams.